Let me know when we're live. We're live?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome to the April 20th NVTA Technical Advisory Committee meeting. On the meeting to order. Welcome everybody coming today. I guess as was indicated earlier, we don't have quorum this evening to be able to vote on the minutes from the last meeting, but if everybody's okay to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting, and we can let the staff know whether or not we have any comments. Take a couple minutes to do that. That would be great.
I already told them the meeting adjourned. I think it's 7:59, not 8:09.
Catch. Do you have any other comments? No? Okay. Okay. Well, I guess we'll review them at the next meeting for anybody else who didn't have the opportunity to read them this time. And we'll review both sets of minutes, I guess, and approve both at the next meeting. So thank you. All right. So I guess the next step is the review of the status of the 6-year program update. Is that correct?
That's right. I can take a stab.
Please.
Thank you, everyone. We walk you through the evaluation process and all the measures, the quantitative as well as qualitative measures we will look through in the last meeting. And now you'll see that 11 by 17 sheet filled with all that information that we promised you. I can again start from step back a minute and let you know that we have 26 applications from 9 different jurisdictions that we are looking at. These, the 4 counties, City of Alexandria, Falls Church, Manassas, and the towns of Clarendon and Leesburg. These are the jurisdictions that applied for funding. You see that the total request is 1.2, just about 1.2 billion. And Monica will probably come back to that. We don't have a number yet how much money is available for this program. So again, we don't know how much is there, and we don't have any. Based on that, we cannot even see how much of the projects we'll be able to fund. Yes.
Do we know when will that happen?
Yeah, the authority is supposed to take action at their May 12th meeting on the payroll amount. So we're working on it now. We were hoping, we saw the CFO for Vdot, the presentation yesterday regarding the state's revenues. And of course, we get some of that. So we're just making some adjustments. So we are going to take it to the authority at their May 12th meeting for approval.
So soon.
Yes.
So yeah, by the time we meet next time, in the next meeting, we will have that number for you. So now this sheet here, the list of projects. Okay, I'll just step back one more time and show the first table in your packet shows those 26 applications in the order of the 4 counties and the cities and towns. And it shows the requested amount for each project, the total project cost, and primary and supporting model components there. That's a summary. Then when you go to the next, obviously you have a map that shows where those projects are located across the region. And then the next one is what is 11 by 4. So we have added a separate sheet, so it's readable. Now, in this sheet is the projects are ordered as per the CRRC rank. That's the rightmost column you see. So this is not for jurisdiction, but it's for CRRC rank. Again, we mentioned this last time, again, reminding that as per Virginia code, we had to give preference to CRRC, conditional reduction related to cost. But that's not the only criteria we have to apply. We can apply other criteria. But that's one of the ways we are showing that how we can give the preference or the how the CRRC gets prior. The column, the second column from the right shows the actual rating that we came up with. That is coming out. We take the person hours of delay reduction both on auto and transit for each project. Divide, actually then add it up for cumulative effect for that project from the day it is completed until 2045. We do a cumulative of all the person hours of delay reduction due to that project for that much time period and divide that by the total project cost. Not that it is total project cost, not the request. Because when we evaluate the project using model and off-model processes, we are looking at the whole project, not just a part of the project. Even if the request is for, say, design only, we are looking at the whole project to see what's the impact of having this project. So we are comparing it with the total project cost. So that's what that rating at the end shows. And then that is listed as per that rank. The third or the third table after this big table in your packet is actually showing that ranking and project cost and things like that. It doesn't go into more detail. It's essentially the same table, but only the CRRC ratings there for easy comparison, not to look through the entire level-based review sheet. Now, I would actually take to the last table in that package. I'm sure Frank has some questions or comments about that he already mentioned to me, but we'll get to that. So that is the second set of quantitative rating we look at. This is a transaction rating. Remember, you all recommended and authority approved 10 performance measures and weights for that. And authority went ahead and approved those 10 measures with slight differences in the weights than what you recommended. Essentially, almost all of them have 10% weight except D1, the pet bike transit environments, that got 15%. And the last one, the surge in person hours of travel increase, last measure G1 got 5%. So then again, we shared the methodology of how each of these measures will be calculated and combined in the last meeting or the meeting before that. We shared that. Accordingly, what this looks at is for each measure, you do individual runs for each of these projects and then look at their actual values of each of these measures of person hours of delay reduction. For example, I'm taking A1, person hours of delay reduction in auto. You look at each of the projects and whichever project gets the maximum reduction gets 100 points. And then everything else is, all the other projects are scaled based on that maximum, the highest ranking project getting 100. For each measure, you do that, and then using that weights, you take a combined rating. That's the process in which we reach to that part of the transaction rating. And we, in the 11 by 17, we had listed that towards the right, and just before the CRRC rating and ranking, we listed that transaction rating and transaction ranking. Obviously, that ranking is different from the CRRC rank, but you can see how each of them fall into this category. I can stop there, and if Frank or anyone else has comments on so far, I will take that.
Can you explain to me a little bit how the CRRC rating is used in making the decisions?
Sure. Yes. So I can say probably there are 5 different things we are looking at One is CRRC rating and rank. Second is the one that I just explained, transaction rating and rank. These are model outputs or off-model tools we use to get an output actual number. So we call it quantitative factors. The third one there is the one that I was going to explain next, which is long-term benefit. The last column with color coding in this table. So that is a long-term benefit. That's also, again, it's not, it's a numerical number we come to, but it's not necessarily an accurate number. We don't want to put one specific number to it. That's why we color code it. And then all the other color coded columns there is what we call the qualitative considerations. So these are, again, we can come to a number, but instead of putting each number and ranking them, we group them into 4 or 5 categories. Yeah.
What I was wondering about is, we went through a lot of discussion about the various weights that we're going to put on things going into the transaction ranking.
Yeah.
And so did the board.
Yes.
And then when you get to the CRC ranking, which shows up in bold, not high, so I presume it's considered important.
It is.
That only looks at 2 factors, costs and person hours at the lab.
Correct.
But so why did we spend all that time on all the other factors?
Let me, well, first, the law requires that we give priority to the projects that have the greatest level of congestion reduction relative to cost. However, our enabling legislation also says we look at these performance measures and additional performance measures. So this is why we do have these performance measures. We weight performance measures. We make sure that performance measures that are specifically geared towards congestion reduction, making sure that they do have a quote unquote higher weighting so that we can be in compliance with the law. But to get to your question, it's because the law says we have to give this priority. The law says we also have to look at certain performance measures such as, and they give some examples. So we are marrying certain processes. Even when we went to court as part of the bond validation suit, I will note, and the judge was keen on this, he said, well, the law says they have to give priority to. It doesn't say they have to explicitly select, because then there's another part of the law which Crrc also identified, which was long-term benefits, that we have to make sure that over time, every locality is getting their, what is it, approximate share, proportional share of the revenue to the revenues that we receive from that locality. So that it's a lot of shells that we're, and moving parts, but it's essentially in the law. So while CRRC is bolded because the law says we have to give priority to the CRRC, we also have to have these other factors.
You might not want to bold it for public presentation.
Well, but it depends on who's looking, because I will tell you, there was a bill in the General Assembly now, I think it was tabled, that had an increased weight for congestion reduction. It took it to 55% for the authority, for Hampton Roads, and for Smart Scale. So people are watching. People are definitely watching. And what's noted, even though the law says we have to have these other performance measures, it doesn't say we have to give priority to those. What we have to give priority to is congestion reduction. So it's
Quite the dance.
it's quite the dance. Thank you.
So yes, that's the priority part. That's why the law says you have to give priority. That's why we have in that ranking order, and that is given us. But as I was explaining, we also look at all these other factors. And one thing that is not in this sheet is the public opinion. We are right now in the middle of public comment period. It started last week. It will go until May end, and May 22nd, May 12th authority meeting. Before the actual business meeting, we will have a public hearing here. Again, hybrid, people can come in person or join online. Once we get public opinion, we take that also into consideration before the staff will then look at all these different aspects and come up with recommendations for the committees to look at. Yes.
So is the public opinion, I know in past years there's been some outreach have different events, but because of COVID, has that been largely scaled back and it's mostly virtual now? Or at the meeting, or are there any kind of public events? Well, that's curiosity.
We are not going out to any other public event other than the May 4th. There is this joint transportation meeting at Vdot offices. This is a required one by law that all the regional agencies and Vdot in Northern Virginia must have a combined meeting every year. This year it happens to be within our public comment period. So May 4th evening is that meeting. We will be there with our tables and all these analysis, everything there. So public can come ask questions. We will be there to answer. In addition to us, we are also requesting applicants to send at least one staff to be in the premises. So if there are questions specifically about the details of the project, that staff can jump in and answer the questions. So we will be that even we will be there. Usually that open house, we used to have it right before the public hearing here. But now we have this opportunity to get where potentially more people are going to visit. So we're using that opportunity to do that.
Some of the newsletters that I read have had quite a bit of discussion about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have been pushing through social media
Yeah,
and
we have.
newsletters for the public to know that there is that
Interesting
opportunity.
to see what
And
happens.
it will be, and we have some of our authority members, they're even putting it in their own e-blast because we had an ambassador's toolkit, that's what we call it, where we've shared it with all of the other PIOs in the region, trying to get the word out. Like I said, authority members are putting it in their e-blast because we really do want to hear from the public, but we want people to be safe as well. And we want to be safe. So
Another opportunity I forgot to mention, we are actually going out is towards the last minute of that public comment period. May 20th is the bike to work day.
Yeah.
And every year we go out and we have a booth and we talk about whatever is happening at that time at NVTA. So again, that's within this time frame. So we will be out there. I think this time we will be in Herndon, one of the pit stops there. We try to keep it in different places different years. So we will be there out there again, giving public an opportunity to come and to us directly there or giving the word out that you can go and send us an email or go to our website and send the comments.
we've made ourselves available for the localities when they're having their regularly scheduled meeting if they want us to come out and talk about this particular process, but we're not going to carnivals and things
Yes.
like that as we've done in or churches as we've done in years past, just because we want to keep health and public safety top of mind. But having said that, the public hearing, like Sri said, people can come in person. We're hearing from people who plan to come in person, and others can give comment remotely, and then you can also submit online.
Thank you.
So if again, I stopped at the transaction rating and said, I can come back to long-term benefit. We just started talking about a little bit about long-term benefit. That again, one of the things that law requires us to look at. In the past, we have clearly mentioned it several times. It has words that is approximately equal to. It doesn't define what approximate means. It also mentions something like available tools to use that kind of analysis. It doesn't specify what tool to look at. We are looking at it with the best possible tools we have on our hand. It also says in the long term. What is long term is really not defined in the law, but we had in 2014, there was a committee set up to discuss this, and they came up with certain principles, which gave us a little bit more definitions, but still not strict definitions. So based on that, we can think about various ways. One is 2014 was the first program. Now we are in 2022 and looking for projects that will use the revenues from 26 and 27.
Yeah.
So we are about 10 years out. So that could be considered long term. That's why we are starting to look at this now. We started looking at it from the 2018-23 6-year program internally. Then last 6-year program, we put it out there. this 6-year program, again, we are putting it out there. So that we are saying that, yeah, this is about long term that we need to consider. The principles that earlier I mentioned about the committee that said completed projects, but then how many projects we have completed so far. Some of the projects are completely completed. Some of the funding that we have done was for design only or design and right of way only. So that phase is completed. The project itself may not be completed. So the analysis, if we strictly pick up as completed projects, we may have 15, 20 projects out of 106 projects that we are funding now. Does that make sense? So what about the other 80 or so projects? So we looked at all the projects that we have funded so far, 106 projects. So that gives us a better sampling, not skewing by the first completed projects, say 20 projects that were completed. It might skew. So we are looking at all the projects. And then, as Monica said, which in accord said approximately equal to. So what we looked at is two different ways to look for. We called long-term benefit 1 and 2. 1 is how much money, in terms of money allocated for projects, how much money went into each jurisdiction. But that's not the benefit. The benefit of the project is actually condition reduction and all the other factors that you're looking at. Money is one factor, but that's not everything. So we also looked at what's the actual impact of these projects on the ground. And that again, we can look in multiple ways. So we looked at one way to look at is how much condition reduction happened within a jurisdictional boundary, right? That's the benefit happening for that jurisdiction. But then we can also think of, but the user, it may not be living in that jurisdiction. User might be living in a different jurisdiction, passing through that facility. So we looked at the origin of these trips that are passing through each of these projects and their network in Northern Virginia, and said the benefit accrued to the user, the residents of each jurisdiction, say they are called that way because that we're looking at trip origin for mostly. So people they are starting their trip in Fairfax County. How much of condition benefit can be attributed to them? How much of that can be attributed to Loudoun County residents, principally and audited? So we looked at those two different ways to look at the benefit itself, the actual benefit of the project, that are different, obviously. So if you look at the condition reduction itself in one jurisdiction, Fairfax County has a lot of condition reduction happening within the county. But then when we look at the trip origins, you see that the benefit for Fairfax County is lower. Obviously, you can see if you look at the map, you can see Fairfax County is right in the middle. People on the west are traveling through Fairfax County to go to DC or Arlington, Tysons, where they're traveling to, or people on the east might be cutting across and going this way. So if you look at the trip origins, other people from other counties and cities are using Fairfax County, so the benefit is divided among all of them. So that's when, and then we said, okay, 50% weight goes to the dollar amount, 50% goes to the benefit. But then you can have two ratios, right? One with the geographic reduction in condition reduction, and that's one extent. The other extent is where you take an average of the dollar amount and the trip origin-based condition reduction allocation. So you look at those ratios, so you get a range, right? And then you compare that with how much revenue came from each of the jurisdictions. What we are seeing is that if that share of revenue is somewhere in the middle or pretty close to one of these outer ranges, then it's approximately equal. Their fair share is approximately equal. If the revenue share is much below the range of benefits, then you're not getting enough. So your long-term benefit is less than the percentage share of revenue. If it is the other way, then you are above the revenue share. So that's what you see here in that column. If you look at, there's only one jurisdiction that has the green there. that is Arlington. So Arlington has received long-term benefit that is less than the percentage share of revenue that came from Arlington. On the other hand, you'll see the dark brown that is for Prince William. Prince William gets more than the percentage share of revenue that came from there. The jurisdiction. Everyone else is approximately equal. Now, how do we consider this into the funding decisions? As of now, we are not saying that we need to make an immediate change or based on this, we have to take drastic decisions at this point, like not fund projects to Prince William or, well, in this case, there is only one project from Arlington County. So if it's not about, we're not suggesting that we need to make these changes drastically, and we have always been telling that these sort of imparities cannot be corrected in one round. It might take multiple rounds to correct. And in addition, authority always looked at geographical balance as one of the ways to when they decided funding in all these programs so far, which not strictly looking at this kind of calculation and percentages and all, but that was the intention of the authority to make sure that we are not funding projects in one jurisdiction or the other jurisdiction. So wanted to spread out and make sure everyone is getting some of our benefits. So that actually worked towards the will that you can see that only 2 jurisdictions are out of balance. Most of the others are in balance. So we think that authority should continue that process until if we see that there is huge difference in these shares in this long-term benefit.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, again, I understand there's probably some conflict of interest to potentially do so, but are you able to make an effort to encourage some of these jurisdictions to actually apply for things? Because it seems like Arlington County seems to be leaving money on the table. I mean, but I understand there's potentially conflict of interest issues you have to be concerned
I agree. We cannot really tell somebody to do what they should be doing, but as I said, the last round also we showed these sort of things and we explained exactly what you are saying, that if there are more applications coming from Arlington County, there is a better chance for them, or at least theoretically there is a better chance that they might get more funding. But again, I don't want to stress that too much because it's not just the funding going to a jurisdiction, it is also the benefits of the projects. So even if we may fund all the projects from Arlington County, but if that facility is being used by somebody else from other jurisdictions, then Arlington County may not be getting the full benefit of those projects. So that's where we are reluctant to say that you should apply for more projects and we will fund all the projects.
Arlington County judiciously say we have one project that's fallaciously expensive. And we have a better chance if we only ask for that one.
I think so for this round, because what long-term benefits is not, even though I know people are probably doing it, it's not dollar in, dollar out. Now, of course, I'm sure back at their own localities, they're calculating, how much revenue we receive from their particular locality. But before we even, the authority approved principles for assessing long-term benefits, as Sri noted, we asked one of our General Assembly members, who was on the authority at the time, what did the General Assembly mean when they put in this long-term benefit language, which is one sentence in the bill and it's, vague. And he said, I can tell you what we didn't mean. We didn't mean dollar in, dollar out. So, we've tried to be more transparent. So we do the assessment with each funding program because as Sri noted on completed projects, what is a completed project? Is it a project that's open to traffic or is it a project that we've met our funding obligation for, but it's still, underway? So we try to keep a running tab. And the other thing about not making everyone whole with each funding program, I have that discussion with every funding cycle. People say, well, you receive X% of the revenues from my locality. And I'm like, but you're not going to get X% of the revenues with every funding program.
Now, I also assume that no matter what all this evaluation shows quantitatively, qualitatively, it still goes to the board, they can change it if they want.
Well, so we of course have the recommendations from the TAC, the PCAC, and then the Planning and Programming Committee, which is the committee of the authority. But you're right, they're all recommendations and the authority makes a decision. However, I will tell you, when we as staff make the recommendations and bring them to you for the committee for your vetting, we program every penny. We recommend the programming of every penny. So now if you want to make some changes, where is the money going to come from? I'm just saying.
So what are the next steps here?
At this point, if you have any questions, if you can go back, and if you still have questions, please let us know. We will be able to answer. We will try to answer them by email or other means. Right now, as we said, we are in the public comment period that will end on May 22nd. As soon as that is done, we will compile all the comments we receive and make summaries of that and provide it to you all at your next meeting in May. Well, sorry,
June.
let me take off.
Yeah.
In June, because we will be meeting
Really
before.
quickly,
Well,
I'm impressed.
Well, it will not be acutely because we will still be in the public comment period when you meet next time. But we can see how far we have reached at that point and give some indications of where we are, how many comments we received and things like that. So at that point. But yes, in June, we will bring all that back to you. At that time, we will also have staff recommendations to you to ponder over. And yes, in your June meeting, you have to have a recommendation for the authority.
On the 6th year.
On this program, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
At that same, well, I guess at the July meeting, when we ask the authority to take action on the program, we will also ask them to approve the public comment period for transaction, correct?
Yes. So that's actually the next agenda item. So if you don't have any more questions on this, we can jump on to that.
Please.
Sure. So transaction update, as Monica just mentioned, currently we are working on all types of analysis that we have shared with you what we will be doing in the past. Right now, our team is working on the 2045 as our horizon year, no build and build for all the projects that we have. I think currently we have 430 projects in the list. Last year it was 352. Some of those projects are completed and removed from the list. Some projects, jurisdictions, no more found that they didn't want to follow up on those projects. Their priorities have changed. So some more projects were removed, but then new projects were added. Several new top-down projects, what we call, we kind of explained it last time, especially transit access projects, some of the technology projects that came out of the transaction, the transportation technology strategic plan. We added all those things. So we have about 480 projects currently, and our consultant team is coding all that thing. I think coding is almost done. They are now starting to run the models to see what will be the conditions in 2045 without all these projects being implemented versus with all these projects implemented. And then we will have some sort of, we already explained the 3 scenarios that we are looking at, future alternatives, how if the future is a different direction, then where will this plan fit in? Whether these projects will not be enough to meet that future, or some of these projects may not be necessary. Where are we? So that's the kind of analysis our team is doing now. Hopefully, we'll have that to be that's our plan, to have some of those analysis. We will bring it to you in the next meeting. So kind of shifting away a little bit from 6-year program and coming a little bit more on transaction at your next meeting. And then that's what Monica was mentioning. At the July authority meeting, we plan to request them to release all that analysis results for public comment. We will probably start it early August and run until towards the end of September with a public hearing at the September authority meeting. That's all for transaction. So that's where we are with the transaction. We starting to show this, or that we are expecting these results to be ready to be shared first with the jurisdictional committee, the RJAC, the staff committee from all the jurisdictions, the agencies in the first week of May, followed by a stakeholder committee meeting. We are planning for second week of May. And then next, that will come to you all because you are meeting in the third week of May. That will be followed by an authority work session on May 19th. So we are, and then week after that, we will have it for the other statutory committees, the planning coordination committee. So we will following up with these analysis results for you all to be familiarized and see where we are going and asking questions, take the feedback and go back and see if we have to make any changes to that. That's going to happen in the next 2-3 months.
All the analysis is essentially reacting to projects that have been selected or proposed by one or more jurisdictions.
Jurisdictions,
There's
agencies, and
no
we,
independent analysis of maybe needs that weren't identified by any of the jurisdictions.
so yeah, we already looked at, well, not necessarily until we do that analysis of these 400 plus projects, we cannot really say what needs are not met. So that's the last step we will have is once we see this 2045 bill, no bill comparison, we can see are we still missing some areas where needs are not met.
So a project might arise.
Yes.
out of that.
Correct.
It's the bottom up, what we call bottom up and then the top down.
We already identified some of those top-down projects where we could see that, hey, this, your transit project ends here, there is nothing continuing here. That's not how transportation works. That person needs to still travel all the way out there. So we already looked at that, looking at the bottom-up project list, we looked at that and came up with a number of other projects that we already put down, put into that list. So some of that hopefully will be taken care of. But yes, once we do the analysis, we can see if there are still missing pieces we need to talk about and add. Yes, we'll be doing that.
Any other questions? I guess then we're at the MBT update.
Well, so the crown tonight. So first thing, if everyone is probably aware, the General Assembly is back in their special session. The two areas, and I'll add a third, we don't have a budget just yet. What I'm hearing is that the budget discussions may start next month. We're still grappling with the gas tax suspension and then the repeal of the grocery tax. And we'll see how that goes. So this is, and to your point earlier, Armand, this is why we're still working on some of the revenue numbers, because we do get some funds from the gas tax. It's through the Interstate Operation and Enhancement Program. Now, I'm not saying it's a lot of money, but with the Omnibus Transportation Bill that passed in 2020, Commonwealth just created Commonwealth Transportation Fund. So everything goes in that fund, and I'm sure some of the gas tax revenues support that. And then we get 20 million off the top, what we pay off the top of 20 million from the state for as part of our revenues to program on these regional significant projects. So we are really trying to see what's going to happen in this session. Don't know when this special session will end, unfortunately. We are watching, things are in the papers and we're following accordingly. I think the House Finance Committee, met yesterday, and some things were reported out, but they are still really in the sausage making, trying to come to consensus. The other thing I did want to know, the FOIA bill. During regular session, or the FOIA bill that would allow, and if passed both the House and Senate, will allow certain committees to meet virtually, even if there is no declared state of emergency by the governor. This committee would fall under that. It did exempt some committees, and these would be committees that really have some fiscal responsibility for making fiscal decisions, but this committee would be able to meet remotely. That's assuming that bill gets signed and it's not changed. So we'll keep you posted on that. we're hoping we can meet remotely because we understand you all are citizens, you're volunteering your time, you come down here after hours. I was gonna say, maybe not you, Frank, but everyone else is at work.
I'm close.
But you come down here after hours to participate in this process and serve on the committee, then we are very appreciative of it. So we hope that we can kind of streamline this. If that bill is signed, then the authority will have to pass a resolution to allow their committees to meet remotely. So I will keep you posted on that. Other than that, I think we've covered everything else that I wanted to say. The last thing I would say, we have 2 vacancies on this committee to be appointed by the Secretary of Transportation. I am trying with all of my might to get these appointments in. We're trying to meet with the Secretary. I'm sure he feels as if he's drinking from a water hose right now, but I am trying to get those seats filled. So thank you.
Great. Any questions?
Can you beat Randy's record?
Well, I can't prove anything. So it really matter, does
Can
it?
we vote on adjournment?
I don't think I can even adjourn the meeting.
Well, I guess you can just walk away.
Everybody's fading tonight.
At a time that says about, what, 7:45, people just walked away.
They faded away.
Faded away.
But thank you for the information. It was a great
Thank
update.
you. Thank you.
Oh, please.
Just a clarification.
Yes,
The phases for which there is still a funding gap.
yes.
So we see some in brownish and yellowish there. So does that mean even if we did fund the requested part is still?
So that project needs additional funding from somewhere. To product to come.
Or which project version?
There is the first color column says phases for which there is
Okay.
still that funding, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're asking us funding for a phase or part of the project, but even if we fund all that request, they still need to identify additional funds to complete the project.
So how is the process working? Is it going to be conditional or it's going to be from only TSI?
In the, I'll probably
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
answer
so,
the question, but.
You know, we really have to take it on a case-by-case basis. You know, not all localities are created equally regarding what they can afford to utilize in filling the gap. So we've had some situations where we've like, hey, we've approved this funding, but you need construction funding. So we're gonna pump the brakes right now to see what happens with construction funding. Then if some of the larger localities where we know they have the resources, it's like, okay, we'll continue to make these investments because we know that you have the resources if you cannot get federal or state money to get the project over the finish line. So we do look at it on a case-by-case basis. We don't like being the only funding source on projects. Well, and I'm saying I really don't like it because, you know, it's just, you know, we need, the localities have 30%, there's smart scale money, there are other revenue sources. But to answer your question, Dr. Shu, we do look at it on a case-by-case basis. That's a great question because we don't want to say, oh, because the authority has already funded a phase, then we're on the hook to continue to fund the rest of the project.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. At least it's getting warmer.
Yeah, it's so light.
It is.
Everybody can fade away now. Thank you.